Hi, I'm Rob.
I'm Rob too.
And today we're talking about more horror stuff to end our month of horrific things in video games. But
It's
today,
October, Rob. It's October and Halloween. Don't overword it.
I was trying to do it like a horror intro type thing. Welcome to the creepy castle type thing.
Yeah, I'm going to try and edit that out. But go on.
Anyway, today we're talking about more horror game related stuff, but with a slight difference because we're talking about folk horror. We're talking about folklore and folk horror. Stuff that doesn't normally get into video games, the monsters that you don't normally see in video games, because in general it's zombies, vampires, the odd werewolf
No. There's no... I wouldn't include vampires in folk horror. Folk horror is...
No, I'm saying that's what you normally see in video games.
I don't recall seeing vampires all that often in horror outside of Castlevania.
No, in horror games, vampire, the game.
That's not... There's still not a lot of them, though, is there?
No, I'm saying that they're more common than stuff like Banshees or
Oh,
nightmares.
well, yeah.
Okay, that's my point. You know,
It's mostly zombies in video games.
It's
though.
mostly
Monsters,
zombies.
Zombies and demons.
zombies, demons, horrific monsters of one sort or another. But you don't really see... you don't see a lot of the more traditional folk horror.
I think you have to sort of classify what folk horror is rather than just using it as a term and then referring to it.
I mean, if you talk about like Dullahan's Headless Horseman.
Well, Dullahan's is a Headless Horseman. It's an Irish bit of folklore in which a woman who's carrying her head will ferry people from this life to the next.
Okay, so is a Dullahan different to a Headless Horseman?
Well, yes, because a Headless Horseman is a man.
Yeah.
A Dullahan's Irish. It's a Irish bit of folklore, isn't it?
Yeah, but a Dullahan is basically anyone without a head, isn't it?
No, it's a similar origin, but it's lots of these folklore tales are slightly different depending on where in the world you are.
I always thought Dullahan was basically a headless rider, regardless of gender.
Well, it doesn't matter. My point is these things differ from area to area.
Yeah. Banshees. I can't remember seeing a Banshee in a video game.
I guess witches are very instilled into folk horror.
Yeah. But Banshees are a different thing.
I will make the case that werewolves are an essence of folk horror.
Werewolves are, in essence, folk horror.
They're not thought of that way. They're thought of as one of the big sort of key monsters, but to dispute that fact, one, there isn't a lot of novels written about them. There's only a selection of them. There isn't a lot of movies made about them. There's only a few of them. And in video games, I can't actually think of any.
See, you say there's a lot of novels.
I think there's not, compared to, say, other key monsters, what is it, used in the same context as, compared to them, no.
It's because, see, you say there's not a lot of movies or novels written about them, but they are featured in certain movies, certain famous movies, and no, not as afterthoughts, as like key players. Twilight had a lot of werewolves. Underworld had a lot of werewolves. I mean, still, Underworld was all about the werewolf versus vampire war.
Compared to other things, Rob, compared to vampires, compared to zombies, compared to things like that.
Zombies...
werewolves are... There's nothing there.
Yeah.
But you're fixating on that point too much.
No, what I'm saying is werewolves don't have the glamour of vampires. They don't have the sex appeal of vampires.
No.
Okay? They don't have kind of the horde type thing. They're not... it's not this wall of zombies coming at you. It's like one werewolf.
If there's a wall of werewolves coming at you, you're boned.
Yes, exactly.
You got no chance whatsoever.
So, they don't get as much attention, I'll agree. In games like Altered Beast, they had an interesting approach to the whole idea of transforming into a monster.
There was something else as well, but it was pretty... I think it was like PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era. But we're talking about something which is super rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, and other things like the Banshee. I mean, there's been horror games games set in sort of mythological contexts where it has like a grab bag approach to monsters and creatures. Yeah. I think the only real example of that comes to mind is The Witcher. The Witcher does a folk horror, which the entire history of video games kind of neglected.
Yeah.
Because in that, there is all sorts.
Yeah. I'm putting The Witcher to one side because it really did a lot of positive things, and I want to use The Witcher as an example of how to do it as well. You know, this is the kind of approach I'd want to see more of in video
I think
games.
there's loads of banshees in that you have to kill in The Witcher.
There's a few, yeah. But aside from that, can you remember any other game that has a banshee in it?
I think if anything's going to do it, Devil May Cry might have done it, because that has it. I mean, it's mostly demons, but there is other little sort of creatures around the periphery.
I mean, there's one of the interesting ones for folk monsters, let's call them, is basically just a ghost. A spectre, a ghost, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, ghosts have kind of been diluted by the 1980s, haven't they? How do these spirits which cling to the land, and all they want to do is basically kill you and go, boo, 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 this is my house now, boo, 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 boo. That's it.
Yeah, I mean...
to go back, I mean, I think here's a bit of horror history for you. I think the first ghost story was written... in the Greek civilization. We're going back thousands of years now. So if anything is going to be folk, it's going to be the ghost.
Yeah. But what we have right now for ghosts, we have games like Luigi's Mansion, Ghostbusters. We have Casper the Friendly Ghost, or whatever iteration of that is. We have these weird ideas of what actually makes a ghost or a spectre or something like that. One of the more original approaches I thought to the whole idea of a ghost was that game Geist on the GameCube.
I have actually seen a ghost, by the way, so I know they don't look like Slimer. Slimer was a lie.
Yes. But in Geist, you can basically project your ghost into other people's bodies and take over them.
I don't recall that game.
It was on the GameCube, and I thought that was an interesting approach. No, and also games like Fatal Frame, where you had the camera obscura and you were basically being attacked by ghosts, but you couldn't see them unless you were looking through the camera.
That's like basically an extension of that Thai horror movie, isn't it? The Eye.
Yeah.
You have to have something. It's on a different realm of existence. You have to have something which is beyond our realm and in their realm. Yeah.
What I love about the Fatal Frame idea was that it played on the whole idea of a camera taking a piece of your soul. So your camera was actually your weapon of attack. You'd take photos of the ghosts in order to defeat the ghosts.
Yeah. I mean, Japan is the country who will do this more than anybody else. But I think the problem with horror games in general is... the good ones, anyway, is it kind of either just here is a monster, isn't it a monster? Or it kind of hides it behind some level of allegory, because that is what Silent Hill is. Silent Hill, for all of its great stuff, it is an allegory.
Yeah.
It's transferring some sort of trauma of the lead character into this place, which is like a mirror for their trauma.
Yeah. I know one of the... when you look at folk monsters and folk horror, and there's certain aspects of it which I don't know how you transition them into a video game. Take Giants, for example. We've played Shadow of the Colossus, right? And we've played games like God of War and stuff like that.
I guess Shadow of the Colossus was more like sort of ancient titans in the sort of Greek mythology tradition.
But giants and trolls and things like that.
Well, trolls are kind of weird and goofy, aren't they? Because you defeat them by sunlight.
Yeah.
But there is this element of a game there. I mean, you could make sort of a haunting ground style game there, where you have to trick the... Oh, there's an idea for a game, isn't it? We're pitching games now.
Yeah.
An idea for a game in which it's basically like a one-on-one multiplayer. One person is the person who's trying to survive, and one is the troll who's trying to eat the person, and you've got to trick the person trick the troll into hunting for you and staying past the time when it can stay alive, and then it freezes. There was like indie game which was awful from a few years ago called Troll and I.
Yeah.
Which was terrible.
See, I never the whole idea of trolls dying, but turned to stone in sunlight, is that actually folklore or is that Tolkien?
Yeah, it's probably Tolkien. But there is folklore to them. Trolls live under bridges. They're Danish in origin. They're pretty dumb.
I thought they were Viking in origin. Well, Danish Vikings.
And
same
they're
thing.
Scandinavian.
Yeah.
They live in caves. They're...
What about ogres then?
Oh, now you're getting complicated, aren't you?
Well, no.
I think
'cause-
ogres are bigger trolls, aren't they?
No, there is a difference. If you look at the way I thought about it was you had in terms of the giant folklore monsters, you had you had cyclopses or cyclopes or how
There's only one Cyclops, wasn't there?
No, in folklore there's more than one. In Greek mythology there's one.
Yeah, that's very what I'm getting in.
Okay.
Most of my folklore comes from Greece, all right?
But in you had cyclopses, giant one-eyed creatures who were apparently a form of ogre. You had giants who were among the smaller species. You had trolls who were about I think maybe just smaller than giants. Giants and trolls could basically have a punch up with the giants generally. And then you had ogres who were much bigger and would eat the trolls.
It's a degree of Dark Souls in the way that it approaches certain monsters.
Yeah.
But, I mean, people who play Dark Souls do admit that there's a lot of mythology when you go looking for it in those games. But if you got to look for it, I don't think that's really all that conducive to creating a... It's got to be for the hardcore when you got to read into it that much, is what I'm saying.
And then you have the thing is, you also have the other aspect of creatures like fairies, right?
Yeah, fairies aren't Tinkerbell.
No, fairies are not nice.
No.
What was it? Terry Pratchett said, fairies are fantastic. They create fantasies. Fairies are terrific. They beget terror. Nobody ever said fairies were nice.
No, that's a Disney creation, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole idea of fairies...
whoever wrote Peter Pan.
Yeah, the whole idea of fairies is very much steeped in blood.
Well, little thieves, aren't they? Little thieves that
They steal
murder and
babies.
steal people.
They steal babies. I mean, that was one of the oldest ideas of fairies. They steal babies.
Yeah, it's like how the Brothers Grimm and their name.
Yeah.
Because they had a lot of these stories which were based on traditional folklore and myth, but stuff they were talking about was horrible.
Yeah.
But in the games, there's just none of this stuff, really. We sort of address it on a case-by-case basis, but I don't think you could... I guess fairies could work in a sort of...
We're saying fairies, not furries, by the way.
Fairies.
Yeah.
It's my accent, all right? I'm northern, so we all speak fairies.
I wasn't talking about...
Oh, I'm really paranoid now about the way I'm saying it. You say. Because I can't. I've become gun shy about that word now.
Fairies.
Yeah, them. Yeah. One of them. It could only really be background, really, I guess. Because they were small, regardless of their different origins.
Idea for a game.
Small.
Idea for a game for you, right? And this is actually something that I think could work. Because we've seen games like Eternal Sonata and Kingdom Hearts and various other games like that. Something maybe a little bit more cartoonized, maybe just to highlight the aspect that that the character is in a different world. But and it'd be a little bit kind of the darker version of Alice in Wonderland. But you basically have to escape from Fairyland, and what you have in Fairyland are all these.
Like American McGee's
Alice.
Yeah.
Yeah. A bit like that, but here's where it gets interesting. There are certain rules that you have to obey when you're in Fairyland. They're similar to the rules. I think they're propagated from the whole idea of going to Hades in Greek mythology. You can't eat anything.
Yeah.
So if you're in Fairyland, you can't actually eat anything in Fairyland because you'll have to stay there forever then. And you'll basically have all these creatures coming to you, offering you this or that or the other. So temptation would be one of the biggest elements in that game.
I don't know how that would translate into a game.
It'd be an interesting thing to look at, though, wouldn't it?
No, because you've not really pitched a game. You've just
No, you basically have to escape from Fairyland, and so there are all sorts of things and threats. Because in Fairyland, you'd have things like the Wild Hunt. Okay, the Wild Hunt is not nice at all.
Name kind of suggests that.
I mean, we're talking about the Wild Hunt that used to hunt people. Okay, basically because they could. And you have the King and Queen of Fairyland, Oberon, Titania, you have Puck, and they're all not nice characters.
Yeah. Onto the Trolls. There was that game earlier this year which was an absolute disaster. It was basically a reskinned Attack on Titan.
Oh, yeah.
Which... it wasn't really anything, was it?
Yeah. I mean, Attack on Titan had an interesting approach to how it did the whole Titan thing.
Well, there went Titans. Titans were this... I mean, I can't remember the name of the Titan, but one of the Titan... Oh, what is the name of the Titan? He didn't hold up the globe, he held up the sky as the...
You mean Atlas?
Yeah, Atlas. That's not a little guy.
No.
I mean, they got their Titans right in God of War.
And the thing is...
the Titans and that, it literally takes you about a whole game to climb up it.
Yeah. The Titans in Attack on Titan are basically just giant zombies, that's it.
Yeah.
But...
Well, giant cannibals, because they don't turn you into one of them, do they?
No.
Not that I know, anyway.
No, not as far as we know. They don't even digest you. They just chew you up and crap you out.
So we're junk food?
Yeah, basically.
Oh, dear.
It's a horrible thought now that you think about it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different creatures. And witches, I don't recall any game which has ever used a witch. I'll be honest. And they are quite...
Well, The Witcher.
Well, they weren't really... Him as in he is the witch.
Oh, right. See, that's what I want to see more of, is games where you play as the monster.
Yeah,
and I think
really done bad in a sort of either nihilistic or sort of fourth wall breaking, sarcastic sort of way, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's never done in a genuine sense.
I mean, I'm coming back to the idea of the Banshee, right? What does the Banshee do? What's the skill set? Announcing death. The whole idea being if a Banshee wails, then someone dies.
Okay.
Right? And if a Banshee wails on the roof of your house, then someone in your house is going to die.
Yeah, it's pretty mean, isn't it? Yeah, you can't really translate that into a game.
Well, weirdly enough, I was thinking something along the lines of a Crazy Taxi type game.
Well, that's a left turn.
So basically, a little bit more of a comedic element to it. But it's kind of... Because I was playing that indie game, Coffin Dodgers.
Okay.
Which is basically Mario Kart on mobility scooters.
Bit of a gimmick, but sure.
Right? While all the LD4 characters are being chased by death. And I thought, okay, do you know, this is weirdly fun in a very, very dark way.
Okay.
And I thought it'd be an interesting thing if somebody merged the whole idea of, say, announcing death. You have a quarter to meet every night, so you have to go from house to house in the city, and you have to make it there on time, announce the death, move on to the next one, in kind of a Crazy Taxi type way.
Well, I don't think Crazy Taxi necessarily, but there is an idea there that would work. Yeah. A werewolf game, let's go to that. How would that work? Because the risk there is you're overpowered, aren't you?
Well, do you know what I think would work with the werewolf game is if you didn't have control of the transformation.
Well, they don't, do they? That's the gimmick of being a werewolf. It's full moon. You transform whether you want to or not. Well,
there are certain other triggers as well. The full moon just basically overrides everything, but it's not the only trigger. So things like, it'd be a bit like the Hulk, anger, frustration, fear, that sort of thing. It becomes a kind of a triggered defense mechanism. So if you had something like a third-person dialogue-driven game where you had to interact with other people a lot more often, and it wasn't as action-heavy, it was more dialogue-driven, so you had dialogue choices, and you basically, the choices you made affected whether you transformed or not.
Yeah, there could be an interesting aspect of that. Say it's vampire.
Yeah.
But instead of trying to keep yourself alive via getting blood in whatever way you can find it,
yeah,
is you're in a place where they are hunting werewolves.
Yeah.
And you can't escape. You're tied to it for whatever reason. And you got to keep yourself out of stressful situations. You got to keep yourself calm.
Yeah.
And the second that you become a werewolf, the game takes over.
Yeah.
And you rampage.
Exactly.
And if you die, you die. But if you survive, you survive. And you wake up the next day and you got to maybe move on to the next town or something.
You could basically add in a little bit of quick time stuff in there. So that
I don't think you should. I think you should be totally, because that's the whole point of a werewolf. The werewolf takes over.
No, that's why I'm saying a little. That's why I went with QuickTime rather than something that is totally controllable by you. Because QuickTime is like it's like one button, two button here or there, and
True.
You know, a QuickTime event in that sort of thing where you basically you either choose left or right. If the werewolf is headed,
yeah.
do you see what I mean?
Sort of like the way that Telltale Games used to do it.
Yeah, that adds a certain random element to it rather than letting the game control it totally. So it's not completely conclusive whether you live or die, but your choices still affect it.
Not so much affect it, but it guides it in some way.
Yeah.
Because it could, I don't know, like a really weird narrative roguelike.
Yeah.
Which I don't think's ever been done before.
I like that idea for werewolves. I think that works.
Might be a bit ambitious, but
It'd be interesting though, wouldn't it?
ambition is what drives games forward.
Yeah. But what about witches? I mean, we have like sorcerer type characters and things like that in JRPGs, and
Yeah, witches just tend to be people who do magic.
yeah,
And that's just basically
it's very reductive when you get right down
on
to
the
it.
surface of it. I mean, historically, witches aren't a thing. But the mythology that came from them, sort of, the witch hunts,
Yeah.
which again was a horrible, 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 horrible thing.
Yeah.
Read it up, it's nightmarish.
I'm not suggesting you do a game about witch hunting. I mean, The Witcher has done a game about witch hunting, but that was done in a very different way.
Yeah, it wasn't about pointing the finger at people who you didn't like or turned you down or for political reasons and then tortured them and murdered them in public ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the folkloric take on that archetype, I think the movie The Witch got a pretty good handle on what that was. I don't know. It's very hard, sort of a mythological entity to wrap around the game narrative. An
investigation game might be interesting for a witch.
What, like Who's the Witch?
Well, possibly like Who's the Witch, but maybe a bit more. There's two angles you can go with an investigation type game, right? You could be the witch you could be basically discover that you're a witch and basically try and find out how to control your abilities by going to different places and investigating that way. That could be one aspect, one angle. So you could have just, like the X-Men when they become mutants and they don't know how to control their power. You could basically play the role of a character who's just discovered that they've got these abilities. They're a witch, and they're basically trying to find ways of controlling themselves.
There is another way you could do it. Because the thing with witches is they tend to be very long-living, immortal beings.
Yeah.
So kind of like keeping your lifestyle intact, whilst also hiding the fact that you're thousands of years old, maybe.
Interesting you say that, because didn't Square Enix do a game like that on the Xbox 360?
I can't.
I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's an RPG where you basically play the role of an immortal. But it was an interesting game in terms of the story, because it didn't glorify immortality in any way. It just said, look, being immortal isn't a nice thing.
No.
The other investigation aspect I was talking about, though, was you basically are a researcher looking into witches. Are they real or not?
Yeah, it'd have to be a point-and-click game then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be a point-and-click adventure more than anything else, but it could lead you down some interesting angles. And if you did it along the lines of games like Broken Sword,
Yeah, I mean, that sort of writes itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it'd have to have a much more pronounced horror vibe to it.
What about Dullahan's Headless Riders?
And then, not really hero, there are they?
They're more of a kind of NPC character, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, NPC rather. Why am I saying NPC character? It's NPC.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of monsters. We could take, like, a different run at this every Halloween and have different monsters from folkloric backgrounds. But, again, it'll all come back to that thing of it was all basically done the best in Witcher. Which is the sad fact of the matter. Like, the succubus. What about that? That could be an interesting sort. Oh, there we go. There's a game. What's he called? That Skeevy Lothario, who's basically like a guy in like a Hawaiian shirt.
Magnum?
Leisure Suit Larry.
Oh, you know,
Like
when you said Skeevy Lothario in a Hawaiian shirt, I went Magnum.
Yeah, there we go. There's a succubus game. The reverse Leisure Suit Larry.
You mean an incubus game then?
No.
Yeah, male succubus.
No. I mean, it's a woman character,
Okay.
but yeah, it's like Leisure Suit Larry, but successful. And
You do realise that Leisure Suit Larry is basically a porn game
yeah,
in parts.
in parts, obviously that part would have to be softened out and like pan over to the curtains while the deed's being done.
Now you're done on this screen, wipe it clean.
Yeah.
That's a reference for people who played Leisure Suit Larry 3.
Yeah, but I think that'd work as a succubus game. You have to seduce people
Okay.
while keeping up the ruse.
Okay.
That's, I mean, it's the thing, isn't it? Certain games are censored. Like, you can have the most horrible violence in games, but a little bit of flesh, a little bit of sex, and it becomes banned.
Yeah.
I think that's an aspect of games that could really do with growing up.
Yeah. Get over yourselves, man.
I mean, and there's bad ways to present sex in games, and there's more positive ways to do it. And I don't think games have found that positive way.
Yeah, I think partly because they are video games and they've only just kind of reached primary school level.
Yeah, because I remember that bit in God of War game right at the beginning where to get some extra life, there was a sex scene in which it panned to the curtains
Yeah.
and you just mashed some buttons. And then, like the Fahrenheit
Yeah.
game where the famous Fahrenheit, what was it called in America? It wasn't called Fahrenheit, was it? The David Cage game, the famous David Cage sex scene, which is hilarious. But I think if you approach like a monster like the succubus or the incubus by doing that sort of gameplay loop in a non-Leisure Suit Larry but kind of adjacent to it sort of way,
Yeah.
I think there might be something to do there.
Yeah.
Really, set in the modern day as well, because it has that protection of I can't possibly be a monster. There's not a monster there. That's ridiculous. Could you put it in like sort of American white picket fence suburbia, and I think you basically got yourself a game there.
Yeah.
Boom, mic drop. My idea.
I think that's a good place to end.
That's my idea for a folklore game. Okay. So thanks for watching. If you have any ideas on what we said or have any concepts of your own, comment below. Till next time, thanks for watching.